The champagne flute shattered on the polished floor. The sound was a gunshot in the heart of the celebration. It echoed the way my own heart had shattered 7 months ago. When this all began, chaos erupted. James, my sister's new husband, stumbled back from her. His face was a mask of pure devastation. Linda reached for him, tears carving paths through her perfect makeup. Her beautiful wedding dress suddenly looked like a costume she had no right to wear. "James, please," she begged, her voice a thin whisper. "Let me explain." "Explain?" His voice cracked, broken. "Explain what?" "Linda, that you slept with your sister's husband? That you're carrying a baby that might not even be mine?" Darren, my husband, pushed through the stunned crowd. He was trying to reach someone. Me. Linda. He seemed frozen between us, a man caught in a nightmare of his own making. He stood in the middle of the dance floor like an actor who had forgotten all his lines. "Is it true?" James demanded, grabbing Darren by the lapels of his expensive tuxedo. His knuckles were white. "Did you sleep with my wife?" Darren's silence was the only answer needed. James's fist connected with Darren's jaw. The crack of bone against bone echoed through the grand ballroom. Darren went down hard. A stream of blood trickled from his nose, a shocking splash of red on the pristine white floor. "James, no!" Linda screamed. But James was already walking away. He pushed through the crowd of shocked guests. A man escaping a burning building. My parents stood frozen, my mother's hand clasped over her mouth, my father's face a dark shade of purple with rage. The photographer, bless his professional heart, was still taking pictures, documenting every single, horrifying moment of this disaster. The band had stopped playing. Their instruments hung uselessly in their hands. My name is Grace, and this is the story of how I brought down the two people I loved most in the world. I didn't use a weapon. I didn't need one. I used nothing but the truth they thought I would never discover. 7 months earlier, I thought I had everything a person could want. We lived in a beautiful colonial house in a quiet Boston suburb. It had white shutters and a wraparound porch where we'd drink lemonade in the summer. I had a career I loved as a pediatric nurse, taking care of sick children and their worried parents. And most importantly, I had a husband who, after 8 years of marriage, still made my heart skip a beat. Darren was the kind of man other women noticed. He was tall, with sandy brown hair that always fell perfectly across his forehead. His eyes were a deep green, and they crinkled at the corners when he smiled. He had this incredible way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. At least, he used to look at me that way. "Morning. Beautiful," he'd say every single morning, kissing my forehead before he left for his law firm downtown. We had our routines. Our comfortable, happy life was built on them. Thursday night was always wine and a movie. Sunday mornings were for the New York Times crossword puzzle, which we'd do together. We had a collection of inside jokes that no one else would understand. From the outside, we were the perfect couple, the one everyone envied. But even the most perfect facades have cracks, and ours had been developing hairline fractures for months. I just hadn't wanted to see them. It started small, the way these things always do. Working late became a common excuse. Then it became working weekends. Our Thursday date nights were canceled for last-minute client dinners. His phone, which used to lie carelessly on the kitchen counter, suddenly had a new passcode. When I asked him about it, he laughed it off. "New firm policy. Babe," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "Confidential client information. You know how it is." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? This was Darren. My Darren. The man who held my hair back when I had food poisoning on our honeymoon in Italy. The man who cried harder than I did when we lost our first pregnancy 2 years into our marriage. The man who stood in the pouring rain after a stupid fight about who left the dishes in the sink and promised me, with tears in his eyes, that he would never, ever be the kind of man who hurt the woman he loved. Promises, I would learn, are just pretty words. They are the lies people tell when they still believe in their own goodness. My younger sister, Linda, was my opposite in almost every way. Where I was steady and predictable, she was a whirlwind of spontaneity. I kept my brown hair in a sensible bob. She had flowing blonde waves that looked like she'd just stepped out of a shampoo commercial. I became a nurse because I wanted to help people. She became an Instagram influencer because she loved taking pictures of herself and getting free things. Despite our differences, we were incredibly close. We were the kind of sisters who had brunch at our parents' house every Sunday without fail. We went on shopping trips where she'd try to convince me to buy a dress that wasn't beige or gray. We had late-night phone calls when one of us couldn't sleep, talking about everything and nothing. You got the brains. I got the beauty. She would joke, nudging me with her elbow. We both knew she was smart, too, but in a different way. A sharper, more calculated way that I was only beginning to understand. When Linda announced her engagement to James, a tech entrepreneur she'd been dating for 2 years, I was genuinely thrilled for her. James was good for Linda. He was stable, kind, and completely devoted to her. He was the anchor to her kite, grounding her flighty tendencies without ever dimming her spark. "I want you to be my maid of honor." "Of course," she said, bouncing on my living room couch like an excited child. "And Darren will be a groomsman for James. It'll be perfect. All of us, standing up there together." Perfect. That word again. I was starting to hate the sound of it. The wedding planning took over our lives. It was a storm of dress fittings, cake tastings, and venue tours. Darren complained good-naturedly about having to get fitted for his tux, but he went along with it, charming the elderly seamstress with his easy smile. "Your husband is such a catch, Grace," Linda said one afternoon as we looked through catalogs of flower arrangements. We were surrounded by pictures of roses and lilies. "James is wonderful, of course, but Darren, he's just got that whole sophisticated, powerful lawyer thing going on." Something flickered in her eyes when she said it. It was just for a second, a shadow passing over the sun on a clear day. I told myself I was imagining things. Back then, I was an expert at telling myself comfortable lies. The first time I truly felt that something was wrong was at Linda and James's engagement party. Our parents hosted it in their backyard. It was a beautiful evening. Fairy lights were strung between the old oak trees, and champagne flowed freely. I was in the kitchen, refilling a platter of cheese and crackers, when I heard their voices coming from the back porch. It was Darren's laugh, a low and intimate sound that he used to reserve just for me, and Linda's giggle, breathy and flirtatious. "You can't say things like that, Darren," Linda was saying, her voice playful. "Why not? It's true," he replied. I pushed open the screen door and stepped onto the porch. The cheese platter balanced in my hands. They were standing too close to each other. The air between them was charged with an energy I didn't want to name. It felt heavy and secret. "There you are," I said, my voice a little too bright, a little too false. "People are looking for the bride-to-be." They sprang apart so quickly, it was almost comical. "Almost. Oh, Grace, we were just getting some air," Linda said, not quite meeting my eyes. She busied herself by straightening the strap of her dress. "Darren was just telling me about that big case he won last week," she added. "The Bretson case?" I asked, looking directly at my husband. "I thought you said that was confidential." Darren's charming smile didn't waver for a second. "Just the boring parts, babe. Nothing classified." They went back inside together, leaving me alone on the porch with the cheese platter and a cold, sick feeling twisting in my stomach. I stood there for a long moment, watching the fairy lights twinkle in the twilight. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself I was tired from work and stressed about the wedding. I told myself they were just my husband and my sister, to people who loved me. But the mind has a way of collecting evidence, even when the heart desperately doesn't want to see it. Over the next few months, the evidence piled up like fallen leaves in autumn. Small, insignificant things that meant nothing on their own. But together, they painted a picture I didn't want to look at. Darren started going to the gym at odd hours, early in the morning or late at night. It's less crowded, he explained when I asked. Linda, who had never shown any interest in my husband's career, suddenly developed a fascination with legal dramas on television. Just trying to understand what Darren deals with at work, she said with a shrug, even though her fiancé, James, worked in tech, not law. They both happened to be too busy for our traditional Sunday brunch on the same weekends. Coincidences, I told myself. Just coincidences. I saw text messages pop up on Darren's phone that made him smile in a way my texts hadn't in months. He'd quickly angle the screen away from me if I walked into the room. Linda started wearing a new perfume. It smelled vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place where I had smelled it before. It was a warm, musky scent, not her usual light, floral choice. I started paying attention in a way I never had. I became a detective in my own life. I checked Darren's credit card statements online, looking for hotel charges or expensive gifts. There was nothing. He was too smart for that. I watched their body language when we were all together at family dinners. They were careful, controlled. They were like two actors who had rehearsed their parts perfectly, never standing too close, never looking at each other for too long. "You're being weird," my mother said one Sunday, catching me staring at Darren and Linda as they laughed over a shared joke about wedding cake designs. "Is everything okay?" "Honey, everything's perfect," I said, the word tasting like poison on my tongue. My mother patted my hand, her expression soft with concern. "Wedding planning is stressful for everyone. Just remember, Linda needs you right now. Being a bride is overwhelming." I smiled and nodded, playing my part as the supportive older sister. But inside, something dark and ugly was taking root. It wasn't quite suspicion yet, but it was the fertile, bitter ground where suspicion grows. The world as I knew it ended on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 weeks before the wedding. I was at the hospital for my annual checkup when I ran into Dr. Patricia Morse in the corridor. Patricia had been Linda's gynecologist since she was in college, and we'd become friendly over the years. "Grace," she said, her voice warm, "how's the wedding planning going? Linda must be so excited." "She's over the moon," I replied, forcing a smile. "Though between you and me, I'll be glad when it's all over. I'm exhausted." Patricia laughed. "I bet. These big weddings are such productions." She paused, then lowered her voice, a conspiratorial smile on her face. "I probably shouldn't be saying this, but make sure she takes it easy. First trimester and all that." The sterile, white walls of the hospital corridor seemed to tilt and sway around me. "First trimester?" I repeated, my voice a faint echo of her words. Patricia's friendly face went pale. "Oh, God. She hasn't told you yet." "I just assumed, with the wedding so close. I thought the family knew." I had to think fast. I couldn't let her see the panic in my eyes. Of course I knew," I said, forcing a laugh that sounded brittle and strange. I didn't know you knew. You know how private Linda can be about these things." Patricia looked immensely relieved. "Right. Yes. Well, tell her I said congratulations. I should go." She hurried away, leaving me standing alone in the hallway with the smell of antiseptic and my world crumbling around me. Linda was pregnant. My sister was pregnant, and she hadn't told me. But that wasn't the thought that made my blood run cold. It was the timeline. The cold, hard math of it. If she was in her first trimester now, 3 weeks before her wedding, I did the calculation in my head. Once, twice, 3 times, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. The engagement party, that night on the porch with Darren. No, it couldn't be. I was being crazy, hysterical. James was the father. Of course, James was the father. But then a colder, sharper question cut through the panic. Why hadn't she told me? Her own sister? Unless she wasn't sure who the father was. I became a detective in my own life. Not the clumsy kind from old movies who leaves evidence of their snooping, but a silent, careful kind. A ghost in my own home, searching for a truth I was terrified to find. My investigation started with Darren's home office. He always kept it locked. Attorney-client privilege. Babe, he'd say with a smile that I now saw was a shield. But years ago, when he'd lost his key, I'd had a spare made. He never knew I still had it, tucked away in the back of my jewelry box. That night, after a quiet, tense dinner where I could barely meet his eyes, I waited until I heard the shower running. My hands trembled as I unlocked the door, the click of the latch sounding like a gunshot in the silent house. His computer was password protected, but Darren wasn't as clever as he thought he was. His password was our anniversary date, 814. How romantic. How utterly stupid. I spent an hour searching. His emails were clean. All business and junk mail. His browser history had been recently cleared. He was covering his tracks, but not perfectly. Then I remembered something I'd heard on a true crime podcast I listened to on my commute. People always forget about the cloud. His photos were set to back up automatically to a cloud server. There were thousands of them. Pictures from work events, client dinners, holidays with my family. I scrolled through them methodically, my heart a cold, heavy stone in my chest. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, until I found it. It was a folder innocently labeled legal research, but inside, there were no legal documents. There were photos that had nothing to do with the law. The first few were of Linda at the beach, her blonde hair whipping in the wind, laughing at the camera. He must have taken them. Then there was a selfie of them together at what looked like a dimly lit hotel bar. Her hand was resting on his chest, her head tilted towards his. His arm was wrapped protectively around her waist. They looked comfortable, intimate. Photo after photo documented moments that should have never existed, moments of stolen time. But it was the last photo in the folder that broke me. It was a picture of a positive pregnancy test. It was lying on a familiar surface, our blue and white striped duvet cover, on our bed, in our bedroom, the place I thought was my sanctuary. A small digital timestamp in the corner of the photo read to 17 p.m., on a date exactly 2 weeks after their engagement party. I stared at that photo until my eyes burned, until the image of that little pink plus sign was seared into my brain. Then, with a steadiness that scared me, I carefully closed every window on the computer, cleared the browser history one more time, and locked the office door behind me. I walked calmly to our master bathroom, knelt before the toilet, and was violently sick. The cheese and wine I'd had for dinner came up, tasting of acid and betrayal. The next 2 weeks required the greatest performance of my life. I became an actress worthy of an Oscar. I smiled at Darren over breakfast. I kissed him goodbye when he left for work. I helped Linda with the last-minute wedding preparations, discussing seating charts and floral centerpieces as if my world hadn't been turned to ash. I attended the bachelorette party and raised a glass to her happiness. At the rehearsal dinner, the night before the wedding, I gave a touching speech. I talked about sisterhood, love, and loyalty. My voice never wavered. Grace is the best sister anyone could ask for, Linda said afterward, hugging me tightly. Tears welled in her eyes. I am so lucky to have you. I hugged her back, feeling the slight, firm swell of her stomach against mine. A baby, my husband's baby, growing inside my sister. The thought was so monstrous I almost laughed out loud. How are you feeling? I asked, my voice a soft murmur against her hair. I kept my tone carefully casual. Any pre-wedding jitters? Nausea. She pulled back, her eyes wide with surprise. Nausea. Why would you ask that? Just wondering, I said with an easy shrug. Lots of brides get nervous stomachs. It's a big day. Oh, right, she said, relaxing. No, I'm fine. Perfect. Actually, perfect. There was that word again, mocking me. Darren found me on the hotel balcony later that night. The rest of the wedding party had gone to bed, but I'd needed air. The city lights of Boston glittered below us. That was a beautiful speech. Grace, he said, handing me a glass of white wine. You thought so? I asked, taking a sip. It tasted like ashes in my mouth. It made me fall in love with you all over again. He kissed my temple, and I had to fight the violent urge to flinch away from his touch. I know things have been distant between us lately, he continued, his voice low and sincere. Work's been crazy, but after this wedding is over, let's take that vacation we talked about. Just the two of us. To Paris. Maybe. We can start fresh. That sounds nice, I said, looking out at the city, at all the tiny, anonymous lives playing out in the buildings below. He put his arm around my shoulders, pulling me close. He probably thought it was a perfect, romantic moment. I wondered if he could feel the rage radiating from my skin like heat. I wondered if he could sense the storm that was building inside me, the hurricane I was holding back behind my calm smile. But no, Darren only saw what he wanted to see. He always had. I love you, Grace, he whispered against my hair. I know, I replied. It was the last honest thing I would ever say to him. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear. Perfect weather for a perfect day. The irony was suffocating. I went to Linda's bridal suite, where the air was thick with hairspray and nervous excitement. I helped her into her dress, a stunning mermaid-style gown that hugged her curves and would hide her secret for a few more weeks. Her something old was our grandmother's pearl necklace. Her something new was the life growing inside her. Her something borrowed was my husband. Her something blue was the delicate garter James had picked out for her. You look beautiful, I told her, and I meant it. She was breathtaking. The tragedy was that her beauty was now tainted in my eyes, forever linked to her deceit. I'm so happy, Grace, she said, her eyes shining with tears that threatened her carefully applied makeup. Everything is exactly how I dreamed it would be. Is it? I asked, my fingers busy adjusting her veil. Everything you dreamed of? For a split second, a shadow of something guilt, fear, flickered across her face before she masked it with a brilliant smile. Of course. Why would you ask that? No reason, I said smoothly. Just making sure my baby sister is getting everything she deserves. She hugged me then. A careful, gentle hug so as not to wrinkle her dress. I love you, Grace. I love you, too, I said. And the most twisted part of it all was that, despite everything, a part of me still did. I loved the sister she used to be, or the sister I thought she was. That was the part that hurt the most. I was mourning a person who was still standing right in front of me. The photographer burst into the room then, all energy and smiles, wanting photos of the bridal party getting ready. I smiled and posed, playing the part of the devoted sister. I clinked champagne glasses. I helped fluff her train. And all the while, inside my head, I was counting down the hours, the minutes, until the reception, until my moment. The ceremony was held in a historic church in the heart of the city, all stained glass and soaring stone arches. 300 guests filled the wooden pews, a sea of pastel dresses and dark, formal suits. I walked down the aisle first, clutching my bouquet of white roses and baby's breath so tightly my knuckles ached. Darren was already at the altar with the other groomsmen. He looked impossibly handsome in his black tux. He caught my eye as I took my place and gave me a small, private wink, the kind that used to make my stomach flutter. Now, it just made me feel sick. The music changed, swelling to fill the cavernous space, and everyone stood for Linda's entrance. She was radiant. She glowed in a way that had nothing to do with the professional makeup artist she'd hired. As she walked down the aisle on our father's arm, I watched James. He was watching her with tears in his eyes. This good, kind man who had no idea that the baby his bride was carrying might not be his. Dearly beloved, the minister began, and I let the familiar words wash over me. I heard the promises about love, honor, and cherish, and then came the vow to forsake all others. I watched Darren during that part. He wasn't looking at me, his wife. He was staring at Linda with an expression of longing and regret that I recognized all too well. It was the way he used to look at me, a lifetime ago. When it came time for the rings, James's hand shook slightly as he slipped the platinum band onto Linda's finger. Her hands, I noticed, were as steady as stone. "You may now kiss the bride," the minister announced, and the church erupted in applause. I clapped too. I smiled until my cheeks hurt. The happy sister, the devoted wife, the woman with dynamite strapped to her chest, just waiting for the perfect moment to press the detonator. The party was just getting started. The reception was at the Riverside Country Club, an elegant, old-money establishment with sprawling lawns that sloped down to the Charles River. Inside, crystal chandeliers dripped light onto hundreds of guests. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the water, glittering under the evening sky. No expense had been spared. There were ice sculptures, a 10-piece band, and enough flowers to fill a botanical garden. It was the physical embodiment of the word perfect. Darren and I were seated at the head table with the rest of the wedding party. He kept touching me throughout the dinner, a hand on the small of my back, his fingers brushing against mine as he reached for his water glass. They were small, possessive gestures of affection that would have thrilled me 6 months ago. Now, they made my skin crawl. "You look beautiful tonight, Grace," he murmured into my ear during the salad course, his breath warm against my skin. "Do I?" I asked, not looking at him. "As beautiful as the bride?" He laughed, completely missing the sharp, bitter edge in my voice. "No one's as beautiful as the bride on her wedding day. That's the rule." "Ah, yes, the rules," I said, finally turning to look at him. "You've always been so good at following those, haven't you?" He gave me a strange, questioning look, but he was saved from having to answer by the best man tapping a spoon against his glass to begin the speeches. The speeches went on for what felt like an eternity. There were funny stories about James and Linda, heartfelt wishes for their future happiness, and clumsy jokes about babies and growing old together. I noticed Linda's hand drift unconsciously to her stomach during that last part, a protective, maternal gesture. It was a reflex she probably didn't even know she had. Then, it was my turn. I stood up, my chair scraping softly on the floor. I tapped my own champagne flute with a spoon. The room quieted, and hundreds of eyes turned to me. I found Darren's face in the crowd. He was smiling at me, a proud husband. I wanted to smash the glass in my hand. "Good evening, everyone." My voice was clear and steady. "For those who don't know me, I'm Grace, Linda's older sister and maid of honor." Polite applause rippled through the room. I waited for it to die down. "Linda and I have been through everything together," I began, smiling at my sister. She smiled back, her eyes already shining with happy tears. If only she knew the kind of storm that was coming. Childhood adventures, teenage heartbreaks, adult challenges. I've watched her grow from a wild little girl who used to steal my Halloween candy into the beautiful, accomplished woman you see before us today. When she first introduced us to James, I continued, turning my gaze to my new brother-in-law. I knew he was special. The way he looked at her, the way he made her laugh, the way he brought out the best in her while loving her exactly as she was. That's a rare thing in this world. That kind of pure, honest love. I paused, letting the words sink in. James was beaming. Linda was dabbing at her eyes with a linen napkin. "But the thing about love," I went on, my voice taking on a more serious tone, "is that it requires trust, complete and absolute trust. The kind of trust where you can share your deepest secrets, your biggest fears, and your most precious dreams." The room was completely silent now, hanging on my every word. Linda's smile had faltered slightly. "My sister has always been good at keeping secrets," I said, smiling directly at her again. It was a cold, sharp smile. Even as a little girl, she could keep a secret better than anyone I knew. Some might say she's too good at it. A few nervous laughs trickled through the crowd. But tonight, as we celebrate this union, I want to toast not to secrets, but to truth, to honesty, to the courage it takes to build a life with someone based on complete transparency. I raised my glass high. "So, here's to James and Linda. May your marriage be built on a foundation of truth, May you never have secrets between you. And may you always remember that the people who love you most deserve your honesty, even when it's hard." The crowd raised their glasses and drank. I sat down, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. That was just the warm-up. The main event was still to come. Darren leaned over and kissed my cheek. "That was a beautiful speech. Baby, you always know just what to say. I learned from the best," I replied, squeezing his hand hard enough to make him wince. The band struck up the first dance song, and James led Linda onto the floor. They swayed together under the twinkling lights, a perfect picture of newlywed bliss. The photographer circled them like a shark, capturing every perfect moment for the perfect album. "They look happy," Darren said, his voice soft beside me. "Looks can be deceiving," I replied. After the traditional dances were over, the floor opened up to all the guests. Darren pulled me to my feet, insisting we dance. "I meant what I said earlier," he murmured as we moved together, his hand hot on my back. "About the vacation. Paris, Hawaii, wherever you wanted to go. Somewhere far away." I asked. "Somewhere we can pretend to be different people." He frowned, pulling back slightly to look at me. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," I said, resting my head on his shoulder, the scent of his cologne filling my senses. The same cologne he'd been wearing for years. "I'm just tired. Wedding stress. You know. Well, the wedding's over now," he said, his voice reassuring. "You can finally relax." "Oh, Darren," I said, looking up into his handsome, lying face. "It's just beginning." Before he could ask what I meant, someone tapped him on the shoulder. It was Linda, radiant in her white gown. "Mind if I steal him for a dance?" she asked me, her smile bright. "I want to dance with all my favorite people tonight." The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. "Of course," I said, stepping back with a smile of my own. "I need to powder my nose anyway." I didn't go to the bathroom. I went to the bar and ordered a shot of whiskey. The liquid courage burned a welcome path down my throat. I watched them on the dance floor. They maintained a careful, proper distance between their bodies. To anyone else watching, it was an innocent dance between a bride and her brother-in-law. But I saw it. I saw the way his hand trembled just slightly on her waist, the way she bit her lip when he whispered something in her ear. I saw the way they both glanced around the room, checking to see if anyone was watching them too closely. I was watching. I was always watching now. The band leader tapped the microphone, his voice booming through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. The bride and groom would like to share a special announcement with you all." A hush fell over the room. James and Linda made their way to the small stage, their hands clasped together. Linda was glowing, and it wasn't just from the spotlight. We weren't going to say anything tonight," James began, his voice thick with happy emotion. "But we're just too excited to keep it to ourselves." The room held its breath. I held mine too, but for entirely different reasons. "We're having a baby," Linda announced, her voice ringing with joy. The room exploded in cheers and applause. I watched Darren's face. He was clapping and smiling along with everyone else. But I saw the tightness around his eyes, the tiny muscle jumping in his jaw. It was fear. My parents rushed the stage, embracing the happy couple. I stayed in my seat. Finally, when the chaos died down, I made my way through the crowd. Linda saw me coming and reached for me, her arms outstretched. "Grace, can you believe it? You're going to be an aunt." I hugged her. "Congratulations," I whispered in her ear. "How far along are you?" 8 weeks, she whispered back, her voice giddy. "We just found out for sure last week." 8 weeks. The math was a cold, hard fact in my brain. 8 weeks ago was 2 weeks after the engagement party, 2 weeks after I'd found them on the porch, the exact date of the pregnancy test photo on Darren's computer. I pulled away, feigning excitement. "That's wonderful. James must be over the moon." Darren appeared at my elbow. "Congratulations. You too. This is incredible news." His voice was perfectly calibrated. Happy, but not too happy. The performance of a lifetime. I excused myself then, claiming I needed some air. But I didn't go outside. I went straight to the bridal suite, where Linda had left her purse and phone charging on the dresser. I knew her passcode, 1234. She'd always been careless. Her phone was a treasure trove of her betrayal. She had deleted her texts with Darren, but she'd made one crucial, arrogant mistake. She'd hidden the photos in a locked folder in her camera roll, a folder labeled Memories. There they were, photos from that night 8 weeks ago. They were in a hotel room at the Marriott downtown. Champagne on the nightstand, her wedding planning binder open on the desk. The most damning photo was a selfie. Both of them, in bed, the sheets pulled up to their chests, her head resting on his shoulder. They were smiling. The timestamp on the photo read 11:47 p.m. At 11:50 p.m. that night, Darren had texted me, just leaving the office now. Babe, exhausted. See you soon. I remembered him climbing into our bed just after midnight, smelling of unfamiliar hotel soap instead of his usual body wash. I had noticed, but I hadn't said anything. I hadn't wanted to be that wife, the suspicious one. My hands were steady as I forwarded the photos to my own phone. I deleted the evidence of my snooping and placed her phone back on the dresser, exactly where I'd found it. My heart was a block of ice. I returned to the ballroom just as the father-daughter dance was ending. My father and Linda were both crying happy tears. The hypocrisy of it all stole my breath. It was time. I found Darren on the terrace, overlooking the river. Grace, he said, turning around, a drink in his hand. I was just coming to find you. How long? I asked, my voice flat and cold. What are you talking about? Don't. I snapped, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. Don't you dare pretend you don't know. How long have you been sleeping with my sister? The color drained from his face. Grace, it wasn't. I have photos. I interrupted, my voice dangerously quiet. From the hotel. From that night 8 weeks ago when you were working late. His shoulders sagged. The fight went out of him all at once. It just happened. Is the baby yours? The question hung in the cool night air between us. A poisoned dart. His head snapped up, his eyes wide with panic. What? No. Of course not. It's James's. Is it? I countered. Because the timing is funny. Isn't it? 8 weeks ago. Right when Linda found out she was pregnant. Are you sure? Darren, are you absolutely sure it's not yours? He couldn't answer. He just stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. I smiled then. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a woman who had lost everything and had nothing left to lose. I'm going to go give my sister a wedding gift she will never forget. I walked back into the ballroom, leaving him standing alone in the dark. I went straight to the band leader and slipped him $100 bill. I'd like to make one final toast, I said. He announced me with a flourish. Once again, all eyes turned to me as I took the microphone. I know I already gave a speech. I began, my voice ringing out through the silent room. But with the wonderful news about the baby, I felt moved to say something more. I paused, smiling at the head table. Linda looked nervous. Darren was still nowhere to be seen. You see, I think it's so beautiful that Linda and James are starting their family right away. Although, I let the word hang in the air. A drop of poison. I do have to wonder about the timing. The smile on Linda's face vanished. You see, 8 weeks ago, which if my math is right, is when this little miracle was conceived, was such a busy time. Wedding planning, work, secret meetings. Now the room was dead quiet, an uncomfortable, heavy silence. In fact, I remember that night 8 weeks ago very clearly. Linda, you had that late meeting with the florist, didn't you? The one at the Marriott downtown. All the color drained from my sister's face. She looked like she was going to be sick. And Darren, I continued, my eyes scanning the room until I saw him appear in the doorway, his face a mask of horror. You were working late that night, too. What a coincidence that you were both at the same hotel. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My mother was on her feet, her face pale. Grace, what are you doing? I'm telling the truth. Mom, I said, my voice hardening. Something that seems to be in short supply in this family. James was standing now, his face a confused mess of hurt and disbelief, looking from Linda to me and back again. Linda, what is she talking about? Linda's mouth opened, but no words came out. Tell him. Linda, I commanded, my voice like steel. Tell your new husband about your meeting at the Marriott 8 weeks ago. Tell him why you might not be so sure who the father of your baby really is. And that's when the champagne flute in James's hand slipped from his fingers and shattered on the polished floor. Chaos erupted. James stumbled backward, away from Linda, his face a portrait of devastation. Linda reached for him, tears streaming down her face, her wedding dress suddenly looking like a costume she had no right to wear. James, please, let me explain. Explain? His voice cracked, a raw, wounded sound. Explain what? That you slept with your sister's husband? That you're carrying a baby that might not be mine? Darren, who had finally pushed through the crowd, tried to intervene. He seemed torn between the two of us, frozen in the middle of the dance floor like an actor who'd forgotten his lines. Is it true? James demanded, grabbing Darren by the lapels. Did you sleep with my wife? Darren's silence was answer enough. James's fist connected with Darren's jaw with a sickening crack that echoed through the grand ballroom. Darren went down hard, blood streaming from his nose onto the pristine white floor. James, no, Linda screamed, but James was already walking away, pushing through the crowd of stunned guests like they were ghosts. My parents stood frozen, my mother's hand over her mouth, my father's face purple with rage. The photographer was still taking pictures, his lens capturing every single moment of this glorious disaster. The band had stopped playing, their instruments hanging uselessly in their hands. You destroyed everything. Linda sobbed, finally turning on me. Her beautiful face was twisted with fury and despair. How could you do this to me? On my wedding day? How could I? I laughed, and it was an ugly, broken sound. How could you? My sister, my baby sister, who I loved more than anything in the world. You slept with my husband. It was a mistake. She cried, the same tired excuse I'd heard from Darren. We were drunk, and it just happened. Twice. I corrected her, my voice as cold as ice. At least twice that I know of. How many other times? Linda, how many other nights did you tell me you were meeting with vendors or out with friends, when you were really with him? She couldn't answer. That was answer enough. Darren had struggled to his feet, holding a stained napkin to his bloody nose. He tried to approach me, one hand held out in a pleading gesture. Grace, please, we need to talk about this. Now you want to talk? I laughed again. A wild, unhinged sound. After months of lies, after I gave you every opportunity to come clean, I wanted to tell you. He mumbled through the napkin. When? I shot back. Before or after you got my sister pregnant. The remaining guests were fleeing now, gathering their purses and wraps, whispering amongst themselves as they hurried for the exits. This would be the talk of the town for years. The Patterson wedding. The scandal that destroyed 2 marriages in a single night. Good. Let them talk. Let everyone know exactly what kind of people Darren and Linda really were. My parents finally unfroze from their shock. My mother rushed to Linda's side, trying to comfort her, while my father stalked toward Darren, murder in his eyes. You son of a bitch, he growled, his voice low and menacing. I welcomed you into my family. I trusted you with my daughter, both your daughters. Apparently, I added quietly from the sidelines. My father's fist was faster than James's. Darren went down again, this time staying down, groaning on the floor. Daddy, stop, Linda cried, pulling at his arm. This isn't helping. Helping, my father roared, rounding on her. You want to talk about helping? You betrayed your sister. You betrayed your husband. You betrayed this entire family. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." She sobbed. "But you meant to hide it," I said, my voice cutting through her tears. "You meant to let James raise a baby that might not be his. You meant to smile in my face every single day while you carried this disgusting secret." My mother was crying now, mascara running in black rivers down her cheeks. "Girls, please," she pleaded, looking between us. "We're family. We can work through this." "No," I said, the word firm and final. "We can't. Some things can't be fixed with a hug and a cup of tea." "Mom." The grand ballroom was nearly empty now. It was just us, the wreckage of our family, surrounded by overturned chairs, abandoned drinks, and the 5-tiered wedding cake that sat on its table, pristine and untouched, a monument to a future that would never happen. I looked at my husband, pathetic and bleeding on the floor. I looked at my sister, sobbing in her ruined wedding dress. I looked at my parents, their faces etched with shame and sorrow. "I'm leaving," I announced to the room. "Don't follow me, any of you." I walked out with my head held high, not looking back. I left the chaos and the carnage behind me. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. There was still one more truth that needed to be revealed. I drove home in my silky, useless bridesmaid dress. The car radio was playing a soft rock love song, and I turned it off with a vicious twist of the knob. The house was dark and empty, a perfect reflection of how I felt inside. But I wasn't going to collapse. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to act. I went straight to Darren's locked office and used my key. This time, my hands were perfectly steady. I began pulling files from his cabinets, financial documents, bank statements, investment portfolios. 8 years of marriage had taught me exactly where he kept everything important. Then, I picked up my phone and dialed the home number of Harold Vance, the senior managing partner at Darren's law firm. "Grace." Harold sounded confused, his voice sleepy. "Is everything all right? Shouldn't you be at the wedding?" "The wedding's over, Harold," I said, my voice calm and businesslike. "And I thought you should know that for the past several months. Darren has been using the company credit card for personal expenses, hotel rooms, specifically, for his affair." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. "I have the statements right here," I continued, as if I were discussing the weather. "Dates, times, amounts, all charged to Miller and Vance Associates. I'm sure the other partners will be very interested to see how he's been spending firm money." "Grace, I'm sure there's an explanation." Harold stammered. "There is," I said. "He's been sleeping with my sister and charging the hotel rooms to your company. Would you like me to email you the evidence tonight, or should I just bring it to the partners' meeting on Monday morning?" Harold sighed, a heavy, defeated sound. "Email it to me, Grace. I'll handle this internally." "I thought you might," I said, and hung up. Darren's brilliant career at Miller and Vance was over. He was too proud to work anywhere less prestigious. Good luck explaining that on his resume. Next, I opened my laptop and logged into Facebook. A few guests who had left before the explosion had already started posting photos. Beautiful, happy shots of the ceremony, the first dance, the smiling couple. I had photos, too. I created a new public album. The title was simple: The Truth About the Perfect Wedding. First, I uploaded the screenshots from Linda's phone, the hotel selfie of her and Darren, the timestamp clearly visible. Then, I uploaded scans of the credit card statements, highlighting the hotel charges. For the grand finale, I uploaded a photo I had taken with my own phone just after the chaos erupted, a crystal-clear shot of Darren's bloody, stunned face after James had punched him. The caption was short and to the point. "This is what happens when the groom finds out. The bride is 8 weeks pregnant with her sister's husband's baby." I tagged everyone, every single wedding guest, every family member, every mutual friend of ours from college and work. Then, I clicked share. I sat back and watched the notifications begin to explode across my screen like fireworks. I must have fallen asleep on the couch, still in my bridesmaid dress, because I woke up to the sound of furious pounding on the front door. My phone, lying on the coffee table, showed 47 missed calls and over 100 text messages. The pounding continued, louder this time. Grace, open this damn door. I know you're in there. Darren. Of course. I took my time getting up. I smoothed the wrinkles in my dress. I glanced at my reflection in the hall mirror, smeared mascara, wild hair. I looked like a survivor of a shipwreck. I felt like one. Let him wait. When I finally opened the door, he looked even worse than I did. He was still in his bloody, ruined tux. His eyes were red and swollen, and he reeked of whiskey. You ruined my life, he slurred, stumbling slightly on the porch step. No, I corrected him calmly. You ruined your life. I just made sure everyone knew about it. Harold called me, he said, his voice cracking. I'm suspended. Suspended pending an investigation. Do you have any idea what that means? It means you should have thought twice before charging your fare to the company card, I said, my voice devoid of any emotion. He swayed on his feet, looking around desperately. I have nowhere to go. Linda's at your parents'. They won't even speak to me. Not my problem. 8 years. Grace, he said, tears finally streaming down his face, mixing with the dried blood. We had 8 years together, and you throw it all away over one mistake. It wasn't one mistake. It was hundreds of them. And you threw it all away. Darren. Not me. I started to close the door, but he blocked it with his foot. The Facebook posts. He begged. You have to take them down. Please. Grace. It's defamation. Is it? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Or is it the truth? Sue me. Oh, wait. You'll need a good lawyer for that. And money. Good luck with either of those after Harold is through with you. I shoved his foot out of the way with the edge of the door and slammed it shut in his face. I turned the deadbolt. The solid thunk of the lock a deeply satisfying sound. He pounded on the door for another few minutes, his pleas turning to angry shouts. Before finally giving up, I watched from the living room window as he stumbled back to his car and drove away into the dawn. I didn't know where he was going, and for the first time in 8 years, I didn't care. My phone rang. It was Linda. I stared at her name on the screen, a fresh wave of nausea rising in my throat. I silenced the call and let it go to voicemail. A second later, my mother called. Voicemail. Then my father. I hesitated for a moment before answering that one. Hi. Dad. Grace. His voice was heavy, weighted down with the exhaustion of a man who had watched his world implode. What have you done? I did what I had to do, I replied, my voice flat. The Facebook posts, Grace. The whole town is talking. Your mother is beside herself. She hasn't stopped crying. And Linda? I asked, my tone laced with sarcasm. How is the blushing bride this morning? He sighed. A long, weary sound. James left, drove straight to his parents' house in Connecticut last night. His father called me this morning. They're filing for an annulment on Monday. Smart man, I said. She's devastated. Grace. She's a wreck. Good. Grace. There was a warning in his voice. A plea. No. Dad. Don't Grace me. She made her choices. These are the consequences. She doesn't get to play the victim here. And the baby? He asked quietly. What about the baby? It's still your niece. Or your nephew. It's still family. Maybe. I said coldly. Or maybe it's my stepchild. We won't know for sure until it's born and has Darren's green eyes. Will we? This bitterness, it isn't like you. Neither is being cheated on by my husband and my sister. I shot back. I guess we're all trying on new personalities. He was quiet for a long moment. I could hear my mother sobbing in the background. Your mother wants to have a family meeting. Tonight. To talk this all through. There's nothing to talk about. I said firmly. The talking is over. Please. Grace. For your mother. We're still a family. No. I said. The word of final. Sharp crack. We're not. Linda and I are related by blood. That's not the same thing as family. Family doesn't do what she did to me. People make mistakes, he started. And people face the consequences. I finished. I'm done protecting her. I'm done pretending everything is perfect to keep the peace. I'm done being the good daughter. What about Darren? He asked, his voice strained. What about him? He's getting divorced and he's probably getting fired. Seems like a fair outcome to me. This isn't you, Grace, my father said again. His voice filled with a sadness that almost broke through my armor. This vengeful person, this isn't who you are. Maybe it's exactly who I am, I suggested, my voice dropping to a whisper. Maybe I just never had a reason to show it before. I hung up before he could respond. The house felt different now, lighter, somehow. Despite the heavy silence, I walked through each room, seeing it all with new, clear eyes. This was my house now, mine alone. In the bedroom we had shared, I stripped the sheets, the duvet cover, the pillows, everything, the bed. I stuffed it all into black garbage bags and dragged them out to the curb. Then I went online and ordered the most expensive Egyptian cotton sheets I could find, in a deep shade of charcoal gray that Darren would have hated. In his office, I began boxing up his life with a cold, clinical efficiency. His law books, his framed diplomas, the ridiculous photo of us on our wedding day, smiling like two naive fools. It all went into cardboard boxes. On the side of each one, I wrote the word cheater in thick black marker. By noon, I had erased him from 3 rooms. By evening, the house felt almost clean again. Almost. 3 days later, my mother showed up at my door. She had been calling and texting non-stop, and I finally agreed to meet her for coffee at a neutral location, just to stop the harassment. She looked like she had aged 10 years in 3 days. Her usually perfect blonde hair was limp. Her eyes were puffy, and her makeup couldn't hide the dark circles beneath them. You look terrible, I said as I sat down across from her in the noisy cafe. Grace, she said, her voice a weak reproach. Just being honest, I said with a shrug. Isn't that what we're all about now? Radical honesty? She stirred her coffee, her hand shaking so much that the spoon clattered against the ceramic mug. Your sister, she's staying with us, in her old room. How nice and cozy for her. She's devastated, my mother repeated, as if this information should magically make me feel sympathy. She cries all day. She won't eat. Morning sickness will do that, I said, taking a sip of my black coffee. Grace, please, she's your sister. Was. I corrected her sharply. She was my sister. Now she's just the woman who slept with my husband. She made a terrible mistake. Stop calling it that. I slammed my hand on the table, making her jump and the couple at the next table look over. I didn't care. A mistake is accidental. Forgetting to pick up milk is a mistake. What they did was a series of deliberate, calculated choices, over and over again. She says she loves him, my mother said quietly, as if it were a confession. And he loves her. I stared at her, dumbfounded. Is that supposed to make it better? The fact that they fell in love while they were betraying me behind my back? No. But nothing. Mom, love isn't an excuse. It's not a free pass to destroy people's lives. What about my love for him? What about my love for her? Did that count for nothing? I raised you girls to be better than this, my mother said, tears finally welling in her eyes. Did you? I countered, leaning forward, because from where I'm sitting, one of us turned out to be a narcissistic homewrecker, and the other one turned out to be the fool who was too blind to see it coming. She reached across the table, trying to take my hand, but I pulled it away as if her touch would burn me. Grace, holding onto all this anger is only going to eat you alive. Wrong, I said, my voice low and intense. This anger is the only thing keeping me sane. It's keeping me strong, and it's keeping me from ever making the same mistake twice, which is trusting the wrong people. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. You can't go through the rest of your life not trusting anyone, she whispered. Watch me, I said. We sat in silence for a few more minutes, the chasm between us too wide to cross. "The baby," she said finally, her voice desperate. "What about the innocent baby in all of this?" "So was I, Mom," I said softly. "I was innocent, too." I stood up, leaving my coffee untouched. "If it's Darren's, he can pay child support. If it's James's, then that's between him and Linda. Either way, it's not my problem. It's your family," she pleaded. "I don't have a family anymore," I said, looking down at her. "I have parents who enable their youngest daughter's destructive behavior, and a sister who takes whatever and whoever she wants, regardless of the consequences. That's not a family. That's just a group of people I'm unfortunately related to." I walked out of the coffee shop, leaving her crying at the table. It should have made me feel guilty. It didn't. It felt like liberation. The divorce lawyer's name was Sandra Lee. She was a petite woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an even sharper suit. She was exactly what I needed: ruthless, efficient, and unapologetically expensive. "Adultery is a fault ground for divorce in Massachusetts," she explained, her perfectly manicured finger tapping on the photos and credit card statements I had spread across her polished mahogany desk. "With this documentation, Mr. Miller doesn't have a leg to stand on. We can make a very, very strong case. I want everything," I said, my voice steady. "The house, the cars, half of his 401k, alimony, everything he has." "That's an aggressive position," she noted, though her eyes glinted with what looked like approval. "He was aggressive when he slept with my sister and got her pregnant," I replied. "I'm just responding in kind." Sandra smiled, a thin, satisfied smile. I knew in that moment that I had hired the right woman. "There's also the matter of his suspension from work," she said, looking over her glasses at me. "If he's terminated for cause, which seems likely given the financial fraud, it could affect his ability to pay spousal support. Then we'd better move fast, before he has a chance to hide his assets." "My thoughts exactly," she said. We spent the next 3 hours mapping out our strategy. By the time I left her office, I felt a sense of power I hadn't felt in months. For so long, I had been the victim in this story, the unwitting fool. Now, I was the one in control. I was the one holding all the cards. My phone buzzed as I walked to my car. A text from an unknown number. "Grace, it's James Hayes. Can we talk?" I stared at the message for a long moment. He was the only other innocent victim in this entire mess. "Corner Cafe. 1 hour." I typed back. He looked like I felt. Hollowed out. Exhausted. He looked like a man who had been aged 10 years by betrayal. He stood up when I approached his table. Ever the gentleman, even in the midst of this disaster. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, his voice hoarse. "We're members of the same exclusive club now," I replied, sitting down. "The Cheated on Spouses Club. Membership benefits include crippling trust issues and a chronic inability to sleep through the night." A bitter laugh escaped his lips. "Don't forget the constant replaying of every single moment. Looking for the signs you missed. Were there any?" I asked. He nodded slowly, staring into his black coffee. Looking back, yes. The way her face would light up when your name came up in conversation. How she always wanted to know if Darren would be at family events. I thought she was trying to be close to your family. To me. She got close. "All right," I said dryly. We sat in silence for a while. To broken people finding a strange comfort in shared misery. "The baby," he said finally, the words catching in his throat. "I don't know what to do about the baby. Do you want it to be yours?" I asked gently. "Yes. No. I don't know," he said, rubbing his tired face with both hands. "If it's mine, how do I raise a child with someone I can never, ever trust again? And if it's not, then you're free." I finished for him. "Am I?" he asked, looking up at me, his eyes filled with pain. "Can you just walk away from someone you loved, even after all this?" I thought about it. I thought about Darren. The man I had promised to love for the rest of my life. Yes, I said, the answer coming to me with surprising clarity. It's hard. But yes, because the person I loved never really existed. He was a character Darren played for 8 years. The real Darren. The one who was capable of doing this. I don't love him at all. He looked at me with something like wonder. You're stronger than I am. No, I said, shaking my head. I'm just angrier. 2 weeks after the wedding that wasn't. Linda did something I didn't expect. She got a paternity test. It was a preemptive strike. A desperate attempt to seize some control over the narrative she had so spectacularly destroyed. My mother delivered the news, showing up on my doorstep uninvited and unwelcome. She wants you to know she's doing the right thing, Mom said, standing awkwardly on my porch because I wouldn't let her inside. Her voice was thin, pleading. The right thing, I repeated, my voice flat. Would have been not sleeping with my husband in the first place. This is just damage control. She's getting the test. Grace, to know for sure before the baby is born. How remarkably responsible of her, I said, crossing my arms over my chest. The morning air was crisp, and I hadn't bothered to grab a sweater. The chill felt good. It matched the ice in my veins. The results will be back next week, Mom added, as if this were a piece of exciting news. I don't care. Yes, you do, she said quietly, her eyes full of a weary sadness. You care so much it's eating you alive. What's eating me alive is the betrayal. Mom, not some morbid curiosity about the paternity of my husband's bastard child. She flinched at the harsh word. That's your niece or nephew you're talking about. No, I corrected her. It's Linda's baby. That has nothing to do with me. I closed the door in her face. I was getting very good at that. But she was right. I hated that she was right. But I did care. I needed to know. I needed that final, ugly piece of the puzzle to fall into place. Darren had been served with the divorce papers the week before. He had tried to contest them, blustering to Sandra over the phone about an amicable settlement. But Sandra was a shark. The evidence was overwhelming. And Darren knew it. His lawyer, a junior associate from his old firm, the only one who would take his case out of pity, had apparently advised him to surrender. Just give her what she wants. Darren, I'd overheard the young lawyer say during a tense phone call. I had been at the bank, closing our joint accounts, when I saw Darren in the parking lot, pacing and shouting into his phone. You're lucky she isn't pressing criminal charges for the financial fraud. Just sign the papers and walk away. The paternity test results would be a crucial factor in the settlement. If the baby was his, the child support obligations would be significant. Part of me, the vindictive part that still screamed for justice, hoped it was his. I wanted him to be tied to his mistake for the next 18 years. I wanted him to suffer. Another part of me, the weary human part, hoped it was James's. I didn't want an innocent child to be a living, breathing symbol of this whole sordid mess. All of me just wished I could wake up and discover it had all been a terrible dream. The news came on a Tuesday. Not to me. Of course, I had made it clear I wanted no contact. But in a town like ours, news, especially scandalous news, travels faster than fire. I was at the grocery store, staring blankly at a wall of pasta sauces, when I overheard two women talking in the next aisle. Did you hear about the Patterson girl? Linda, the one whose wedding fell apart. Oh, the one with the sister? Of course. What happened? The paternity test came back. It wasn't the husband's. My heart stopped. For a split second, a dizzying wave of relief washed over me. It wasn't his. No, the other woman gasped. So it really was? The sister's husband. The first woman confirmed, her voice dripping with delicious gossip. Can you even imagine? Her own sister's husband. I abandoned my shopping cart in the middle of the aisle and walked out of the store. I drove home on autopilot, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. So, Darren was going to be a father after all. Just not with me. Not in the beautiful house we had bought together. Not in the future we had so carefully planned. He was going to have a child with her. The house was deathly quiet when I got home. I had gotten used to the silence, but today it felt different. It felt heavy, suffocating. All those years of trying, all those years of negative pregnancy tests and quiet tears in the bathroom. And now, he had managed it so easily, so carelessly. With my own sister, I poured a large glass of red wine, not even bothering with a coaster. It was 5 o'clock somewhere, and my world had just ended for the second time. I sat on the porch swing, the same one where Darren had proposed to me 9 years ago. Two young, stupid kids who thought love conquered all. My phone rang. It was Sandra. I heard. She said without preamble. Her voice was brisk. All business. So did I. I replied, my voice hollow. In the pasta, I'll stop and shop. Listen to me. Grace, she said, her tone sharpening. This actually works in our favor. A confirmed child support obligation will reduce his available assets for the alimony settlement, but it cements the adultery claim beyond any shadow of a doubt. It makes him look even more reckless and irresponsible to the court. We have him completely cornered. How much? I asked, swirling the wine in my glass. How much will he have to pay? Based on his income, assuming he finds another job at a comparable levelet, will be around $3,000 a month. For 18 years, longer if the child goes to college in state. I did the math in my head. Over $500,000. A lifetime of consequences. Good, I said. You sound awfully calm about this. Sandra noted. I'm not calm, I said, taking a long sip of wine. I'm just empty. I think I knew all along. The timing was just too perfect for it not to be his. Still, she said, her voice softening slightly. Confirmation hits differently. Yes, it did. It hit like a sledgehammer to the chest. But I had gotten very good at not showing the pain. What's next? I asked, changing the subject back to the divorce. Now, we push for a quick settlement. He has absolutely no leverage. Between the affair, the financial fraud, and now the baby, he'll give us anything we want just to make this go away. Then let's end it, I said, as quickly as possible. After I hung up, I stayed on the swing, watching the sky turn from blue to orange to a deep, bruised purple. I thought about all the times Darren and I had sat here, dreaming about our future children. How he wanted a boy he could teach to play catch. How I wanted a girl whose hair I could braid. Now, he would have a child with my sister, and I would have this empty house, a fat divorce settlement, and the bitter satisfaction of revenge. It didn't feel like enough. It didn't feel like anything at all. Linda showed up a week later. I was in the garden, violently pulling weeds from my neglected flower beds, when I heard her car pull into the driveway. It was a small, practical sedan, a far cry from the flashy convertible James had bought her. I didn't look up when she approached. I just kept ripping weeds from the earth, my knuckles raw and caked with dirt. Grace, I said nothing. I yanked a stubborn dandelion from the soil, root and all. Please, she said, her voice small and shaky. I need to talk to you. No, I said, still not looking at her. You don't need to talk to me. You need to absolve your guilt. And that's not my job anymore. I'm keeping the baby, she announced, as if I hadn't known. Congratulations. It's a boy. And it's Darren's. I know. He wants to be involved, she continued, her words rushing out. He wants to be a father to him. How very modern of you both. She was quiet for a long moment. I could feel her watching me, probably taking in my unwashed hair tied up in a messy bun, the dirt smudged on my cheek, the feral look in my eyes. I was no longer the perfect, put-together older sister. I was a wild thing in a ruined garden. I'm sorry, Grace, she said finally. No, you're not. I am. I never meant for. You're sorry you got caught, I interrupted, finally looking up at her. She flinched. She was wearing one of my old college sweatshirts, a faded gray one with a Harvard logo. The sight of it, of my things on her body, filled me with a fresh, hot rage. You're sorry your perfect wedding was ruined and your rich husband left you. You're sorry that now you're going to be a single mother living with our parents. But you are not sorry you did it. That's not true. Did you think about me at all? I demanded. Getting to my feet, I took a step toward her, and she instinctively took a step back. When you were in that hotel bed with him, my husband, did you think about me for even 1 second? Her silence was the only answer I needed. That's what I thought. I loved him. She whispered, the words barely audible. A desperate, pathetic justification. So did I. I said, no. She said, shaking her head, a strange intensity in her eyes. I mean, I loved him first, years ago, before you even met him. I stared at her, completely bewildered. What are you talking about? You're lying. I'm not. She insisted. That night at the bar downtown, when you introduced us, I saw him first. I was going to go talk to him, but then you came back from the bathroom and he saw you, and he only had eyes for you. And I let it happen. I never said anything. The world tilted on its axis. She had been harboring this for 9 years. So you waited 8 years and a whole marriage to finally make your move? I didn't plan it. She cried. But that night at the engagement party, we were talking and drinking, and he said I looked beautiful. And it was like all those years of waiting just broke. I was weak. Wake. I repeated, the word tasting like poison. That's your excuse for everything, isn't it? You're just weak. I don't have an excuse, she said, tears finally falling. I wanted you to know it wasn't meaningless. It wasn't just sex. I love him. And does he love you? I asked, the question a cruel, deliberate jab. She looked away, down at her scuffed sneakers. He says he does. But what? But he still loves you more, she admitted, her voice cracking. He wants to work things out with you. He told me that's all he wants. Too bad, I said, turning my back on her. That ship has sailed, sunk, and is now a rusted wreck at the bottom of the ocean. Grace, please, if you can't forgive me, at least forgive him. You two were so good together. Were we? I asked the empty air. Were we really? Because the man who was so good with me wouldn't have slept with my sister. I paused, then turned back to face her one last time. You said it happened twice. She looked confused. What? The affair. You said it was a mistake that happened twice. She hesitated, chewing on her lower lip. It was more than twice. She confessed in a whisper. My heart, which I thought could not break any further, splintered into 1,000 more pieces. How many times? Linda, I don't know. She sobbed. 12, maybe more. It started a few weeks after the engagement party. It went on for 2 months. 2 months. 2 months of secret meetings, of lies, of family dinners where they sat across the table from each other, playing their parts. 2 months of me worrying that we were drifting apart, while they were actively, willfully destroying my life. Get out, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. Grace, get out of my garden. Get off my property. And if I ever see your face again, it will be too soon. She fled then, running to her car like a frightened animal. I was left alone in my destroyed garden, surrounded by uprooted weeds and the ruins of my life. I sank to my knees and began pulling up the flowers along with the weeds, my hands tearing at the beautiful, innocent rose bushes. It seemed fitting. If my life was going to be ugly, then my garden would be, too. The divorce was finalized on a rainy Monday in October, the world outside matching the gray landscape of my heart. There was no dramatic courtroom showdown. In the end, Darren didn't contest a single thing. Sandra had cornered him so completely that he had no choice but to surrender. I got the house, free and clear. I got my car. I got half of his substantial retirement account and a hefty settlement from our joint savings. He got his personal belongings still packed in the boxes I'd labeled Cheater his leased luxury sedan, and a court order to pay child support for the next 18 years. We didn't speak a single word to each other during the proceedings. We sat at opposite ends of a long, Polished conference table in Sandra's office. Two strangers who used to share a bed. A home. A life. Our lawyers did all the talking. Their voices a sterile drone of legal jargon that signified the official end of us. Is there anything either of you would like to say before we conclude? The mediator asked, a kind-faced woman who looked deeply uncomfortable. Darren looked at me then, for the first time all morning. His green eyes, the ones that used to make me melt, just looked tired and defeated. I'm sorry, Grace, he said, his voice hoarse, for everything. You deserved better than me. Yes, I agreed, my voice cold and even. I did. And that was it. 8 years of marriage, a shared history, 1,000 inside jokes all dissolved in 20 minutes with the stroke of a few pens. Sandra walked me to my car afterward, holding a large black umbrella over both our heads against the relentless drizzle. How do you feel? She asked, her sharp eyes studying my face. Free, I said. And to my surprise, I meant it. A heavy weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying had finally been lifted. What's next for you? I don't know, I admitted, looking out at the rain-streaked street. Travel, maybe, or go back to school for my nurse practitioner license. Something new, something that's just for me. Good for you, she said, giving my arm a firm, encouraging squeeze. You've earned a fresh start. I drove Hamami home now. Not our sand walked through the empty, silent rooms. I had already started the process of reclaiming the space. The walls were painted new colors, a calm, soothing sage green in the living room, a cheerful yellow in the kitchen. I had sold our heavy, dark furniture and bought new pieces that were lighter, more modern. It was slowly starting to look like a place I could live in again, rather than a place I was haunting. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from my mother. Linda had the baby this morning. A boy. Michael David Miller. 7 pounds. 3 ounces. Both are healthy. I stared at the message. At the name. Michael David Miller. He had given his son his own middle name. A legacy of betrayal. I pictured the baby. Small and helpless. With Darren's sandy hair and green eyes. An innocent child born from an ugly truth. I felt a pang of something a pity. Not anger. Just a deep, profound sadness for this little boy who would grow up in the shadow of his parents' choices. Then, I deleted the message. I blocked my mother's number. I blocked my father's. I needed a clean break. I needed to cauterize the wound. Spring came early that year. By late February, brave little crocuses were pushing their way through the last of the melting snow. I was in the Gardenia therapy. My salvation when I heard an unfamiliar car pull into the driveway. I recognized the man who got out. Though, it was James. He looked good. He looked healthier and more relaxed than the last time I'd seen him. In that sad little coffee shop, he'd grown a beard that suited him, and his smile seemed genuine when he saw me. Grace, he said, walking toward the garden gate. You look well. Gardening agrees with me, I said, pulling off my dirt-caked gloves and wiping my hands on my jeans. It's satisfying to pull things up by the roots. What brings you by? I just wanted to thank you, he said, his expression serious, for what you did at the wedding. I know it was explosive, but you told the truth. It hurt like hell, but you saved me from a much worse fate, living a lie. I finished for him. Exactly. He paused, leaning against the fence post. I heard about the baby. Did you? I try not to. Darren's been posting pictures on Facebook, he said with a humorless laugh. Hashtag proud papa. Hashtag my whole world. How nice for him. I said dryly. You haven't seen them? No. I blocked everyone involved months ago. It's easier that way. He nodded in understanding. I did the same. I started completely fresh. New job. New city. I'm just back in town to finalize the sale of the house. You're selling it? Too many memories, he said with a shrug. Or maybe, not enough of the right ones. You understand? I did. I understood completely. We talked for a while longer. About safe, neutral things. the insane Boston real estate market, our jobs, the unseasonably warm weather. Then he said something that surprised me. I'm seeing someone. Oh, I said, genuinely happy for him. That's wonderful. James. Yeah. She's a teacher. I met her at a coffee shop in my new town. She's nice. Normal. He hesitated. She doesn't know the whole story. Just that I'm divorced. That's probably wise. I said. Is it? He asked, looking at me earnestly. Starting something new with half-truths? It's not a lie. I reasoned. You are divorced. The messy details are your business, not hers. Not unless it gets serious. He considered this for a moment. Maybe you're right. I usually am, I said with a small smile. Just ask my ex-husband. We both laughed. A shared, dark humor that only two survivors of the same shipwreck could understand. What about you? He asked, his tone gentle. Are you seeing anyone new? No, I said without a second's hesitation. I'm enjoying being alone. I feel like I'm finally figuring out who I am when I'm not someone's wife or someone's sister. And who is that person? I thought about it, looking at my hands, the dirt ingrained in the lines of my palms. She's someone who is a lot stronger than she ever knew, someone who values truth over comfort, and someone who is learning, slowly, how to be happy on her own. That's a lot of growth for 6 months, he said, impressed. It's been an educational time. He stood up to leave, then turned back, a final question in his eyes. Can I ask you something? Grace. Sure. Do you ever regret it? What you did? Telling the truth so publicly at the wedding? No, I said. The answer clear and immediate. I regret that I had to. I regret that they were the kind of people who put me in that position. But telling the truth? Never. Even though it cost you everything. It didn't cost me everything. I corrected him. It cost me my illusions. And that's not the same thing at all. He smiled. A sad, knowing smile. I hope I can see it that way someday. You will. I promised. Just give it time. After he left, I returned to my garden. The rose bushes I had tried to destroy in my rage had survived. They were covered in tiny, new green buds, new life, pushing its way out of the scarred earth. Starting over wasn't easy, but it was possible. A year to the day after the wedding, a letter arrived in my mailbox. The envelope was a heavy, cream-colored stock. I recognized Darren's elegant, sloping handwriting immediately. My first instinct was to tear it up, to throw it away unopened. But my curiosity, a trait I now knew was both a blessing and a curse, won out. I opened it. Grace, I know I have no right to contact you. I know you've blocked every other possible form of communication. But I needed to say some things. And I hope you'll let me. You were right. You were right about everything. I was a coward, a liar, and a fool. I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me for something that was never even real. Linda and I are not together. We tried. For the baby's sake. But it was a disaster. It turns out that a relationship built on a foundation of betrayal and deceit doesn't have much of a chance. Who knew? I see my son every other weekend. His name is Michael. He is beautiful and perfect, and he has your eyes. Ironically enough, not my green ones. Your deep, steady brown ones. Every time I look at him, I'm reminded of what I lost. The family we should have had. The life we planned. I'm not writing this to ask for your forgiveness. I know that's impossible, and I know I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand. I understand the depth of the hurt I caused you. I understand what I threw away, and I understand that some mistakes can never, ever be undone. I hope you're happy, Grace. I truly do. I hope you found peace. I hope you found someone who deserves you. Because I never did. The house looks beautiful. By the way, I drove by last week not stalking. I promise. Just passing through the old neighborhood and I saw your garden. It's incredible. You always did have a gift for making things grow, even in the most difficult soil. I won't contact you again. This is my goodbye. The goodbye I should have had the courage to say to you properly a long time ago. You deserved so much more than what I gave you. You deserved truth and loyalty and a love that put you first. I'm so sorry I couldn't be that man for you. Darren. P.S. Linda asked me to tell you she's sorry. She's in therapy, trying to understand why she does the things she does. I think losing you broke something in her. Losing you broke something in both of us. I read the letter 3 times. Then, I walked to the fireplace, struck a match, and held the corner of the heavy paper to the flame. I watched as his words, his regrets, his pathetic apologies, curled and blackened, turning to ash and floating up the chimney into the night sky. It didn't bring the satisfaction I thought it would. It didn't bring pain, either. It was just nothing. They were just words from a stranger, about people I used to know a long time ago. My phone rang just as the last of the letter turned to ash. It was Sandra Lee. "Grace," she said, her voice as crisp as ever. "I have an interesting proposition for you. I'm not looking to sue anyone else." "Sandra," I said, watching a final glowing ember wink out in the fireplace. She laughed, a short, sharp sound. "This isn't about a lawsuit. I have a new client. She's going through something remarkably similar to what you experienced. Infidelity. A family member involved. The whole messy 9 yards. She's a wreck. She feels like she's completely alone in it. I know the feeling," I said quietly. "I thought you might. She could really use someone to talk to who's been through it, who gets it in a way a lawyer or a therapist can't. Would you be willing to meet with her? Unofficially. Of course. Just for a coffee. To let her know she's not crazy and she'll get through it." I thought about it for a long moment. I thought about the dark, lonely nights after the wedding, when I felt like I was the only person in the world drowning in such a specific kind of pain. I thought about how desperately I had wished for someone, anyone, who truly understood. "Yes," I said, the answer clear and certain. "I'll meet with her." "Wonderful," Sandra said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "I'll set it up." After we hung up, I looked round my quiet, peaceful house, my rebuilt life, the house that was mine alone, the garden outside, blooming with new life I had coaxed from scarred earth, the hard-won peace I had found in my own solitude. Maybe this was the way forward, not by forgetting the past or pretending it didn't happen, but by using it, by turning my pain into a purpose, by taking the ugliest thing that had ever happened to me and using it to help someone else navigate their own darkness. It wasn't the life I had planned with Darren on that porch swing all those years ago, but it was my life, a life built on a foundation of hard truths instead of pretty lies. And for the first time, that felt like more than enough. The support group meets every Tuesday night in the quiet, drafty basement of St. Mark's Church. We call it Healing After Betrayal. I started it with that first woman Sandra sent me, and it's grown over the last 3 years. Some weeks there are 5 of us. Some weeks there are 15. Tonight, there's a new face, a woman in her late 20s, her wedding ring still on her finger, but twisted around and around nervously. Her eyes are red-rimmed and exhausted. She reminds me so much of myself 5 years ago that it makes my chest ache. "Would you like to share your story?" I ask gently, my voice soft in the circle of mismatched chairs. "My husband." She starts, then stops, her voice catching. She takes a shaky breath. "My husband and my best friend, my maid of honor. I caught them last week in our guest room." A collective sigh of recognition and empathy moves through the group. They say it just happened. The new woman whispers, tears finally spilling over, that it didn't mean anything. But you know better. Another member, a man whose wife left him for his brother, finishes for her. It never just happens. The woman nods, sobbing openly now. 20 years of friendship, 12 years of marriage. How do I ever move past this? "You don't move past it," I say, leaning forward. "You move through it. There's a difference. Sometimes, when it feels right." I tell them my story, the perfect wedding, the shocking revelation, the messy, explosive aftermath. I tell them how I burned my old life to the ground and built something new, and stronger from the ashes. I tell them how the revenge felt good and powerful in the moment, but how the healing, the slow, quiet work of rebuilding myself, felt infinitely better in the long run. Did you ever forgive them? The new woman asks, her tear-filled eyes fixed on me. No, I answer, always honest. I don't think I ever will. Forgiveness is for them, and they don't deserve it. But I did forgive myself, for not seeing the signs sooner, for trusting the wrong people so completely, for thinking love meant I never had to protect myself. After the meeting, I drive home through the familiar streets of my town. I pass the historic church where Linda got married. I pass the Marriott Hotel where my nephew was conceived. I pass all the ghosts of the life I used to have. They don't haunt me anymore. They're just part of the landscape now. Landmarks of a country I no longer live in. My phone buzzes at a red light. It's a text from my mother. We have slowly, cautiously, rebuilt a relationship over the years. It's not what it was, it's something quieter, more careful, with unspoken boundaries that we both respect. Michael's 5th birthday party is Saturday at the park. I know you won't come, but I just wanted you to know you're always welcome. I read the message, feel a familiar, dull ache, and then delete it without responding. Some bridges are meant to stay burned. It's safer that way. When I get home, there's a bouquet of flowers on my porch steps, white roses and baby's breath. There's never a card, but I know who they're from. James sends them every year on the anniversary of the wedding that wasn't. It's his silent way of saying thank you, I think, or maybe sorry, or maybe just, I remember. I bring them inside and arrange them in a vase, the scent filling my quiet house. My cat, a cranky but lovable tabby I named Truth, winds around my legs, complaining that his dinner is late. Just you and me again tonight, buddy, I tell him, scratching him behind the ears. He purrs, completely unconcerned with my human dramas. I make myself a simple dinner, pour a glass of wine, and go out to sit on my porch swing. The sky is clear, and the first stars are beginning to appear. The house is paid off. My garden is the envy of the neighborhood. My life is quiet and peaceful and entirely my own. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had kept quiet at that wedding. If I had let Linda and James live out their happy, perfect lie. If I had confronted Darren privately and tried to salvage our broken marriage. But those are just what-ifs. Ghost stories about a life I was never meant to live. I deal in what is. I deal in truth. The truth is, they showed me exactly who they were, and I was brave enough to believe them. The truth is, I survived the fire. The truth is, I'm happier now, truly, peacefully happy, than I ever was when I was pretending everything was perfect. My name is Grace, and this is my story. It's not a story about a happily ever after. It's a story about what comes after, just after. And sometimes, that's more than enough. Sometimes, that's everything.